The other day in one of the comment sections of one of my videos, somebody said that I was a woman's worst nightmare. And I said, I'm not a woman's worst nightmare. I'm not an Argentinian man. And I wanted to back that up with proof. Not because of anything other than the fact that I haven't made a video about something like this in a very long time, about, I'll just say the biological propensity of certain populations to engage in violent activities to solve common problems. What I like to call the melanin theory of violence. Now, what do I mean by that? Certain groups of people have a higher propensity to use violence to solve problems. And this, in fact, correlates to a very large disparity in domestic violence. Hispanic women are 3 times more likely to be the victim of violence than a white woman. And on top of that, in Argentina, there have been well over 100 partner murders, meaning 100 times a man has murdered his wife or girlfriend, leaving, and over 100 also that this has left a child without a mother. And this is because certain groups, as I said, I like to call it the melanin theory of violence. It could also be called the melanin theory of crime. And I'll leave a link to that too, but certain groups are more likely to engage in violence than others, and mostly blacks and Latinos are those groups. Now, why am I saying this? Well, the fact of the matter is, it could go to a deeper, what I would think a biological level, in that Native Americans, when I was in the Southwest, I noticed Native Americans have a very high propensity toward brutalizing the women and girls of their tribes, and a high propensity toward what I would call pedophilia or pedophilic relationships, guys in their 20s or 30s dating girls that are easily 12, 13, 14 years old, and letting it known easily. And there's also a high prevalence of hallucinations and mental illness in Latino and Hispanic and Native American populations. Native American culture is so plagued by mental illness that it's part of their culture. Having visions and things of that nature is part of the Native American culture. In fact, it's the vision quest. Now, there is the use of hallucinatory agents to elicit these things, and there may be some drug-induced psychosis after the fact. However, it seems that many of these people have these hallucinations without the use of psychedelic medicines or psychedelic drugs. I've met many Hispanics that exhibit schizophrenia. One of the funny things is that, going back to the propensity toward violence, it's also prevalent in the women, or not even necessarily violence, but also intimidation. And it was funny, many years ago when I worked in mental health, there was a Puerto Rican woman, and she started getting angry at me because I called her out on not telling me the truth. I was trying to find her housing, and she lied to me about certain things, about why she had lost the housing, and she started getting mad at me even though I was right, saying, "You're telling me I'm not telling the truth? You're telling me I'm not telling the truth?" So what happened was, the therapist that I was working with, it was a shared client, he got intimidated because he was one of these liberal, thin liberal queer, gentlemen that might be a little light in the loafers. And it was funny because he just wanted me to get her out of his office. He was terrified. And then after that, we had a meeting, and it was funny because he goes, "I don't know, dude. I thought she was going to cut you, homie." But it shows that there are people, like with me, I grew up around minorities. So I'm used to the mood swings, the aggressive behavior, the flamboyant behavior, all that stuff is very prevalent in minority communities. But the fact of the matter is, this is a real fact. I'm leaving links in the description. Please look at the links to know that I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. But it is an important thing to remember. And by the way, if you're watching Eliana, remember, I am not an Argentinian man.